Hey, hey, I've got Robert Hill back on the podcast today. And if you're not following his Instagram, I'll put it in the show notes, but go follow it because I don't think I've told you this. I totally stalk you and like look at all the places you've been. And just his photography skills are amazing. So I brought Robert back on to talk about money. He is a business coach and then what do you call it? An adventure elopement photographer. Is that
Yep.
the way that yeah. And so his photography skills and pictures are amazing. So go check him out on Instagram. So thanks again for coming back and having a
Yeah, I'm
conversation
stoked.
and all the things. So in my visits with, or I should say interviews with lots of people that I've had on the podcast, money has been kind of, I think I would like it's been the thing that obviously has affected my life. And I think it's the thing that I've had to really work through. And um has resonated with a lot of people. And so, one of the things that my goal for this podcast is to show up and to share vulnerably because I think for a lot of us, one, right, it can be difficult to do because that exposes us and when we don't feel safe in our bodies to do that. And it was just something that I really wanted to be like raw and vulnerable and to share. And so for the money aspect, tell me or tell the listeners a little bit about your history growing up because the more that I talk to people, the more that people respond back. They're like, I'm not the only one. Like this was happened to me too, or this has kind of been my story. And so I think it gives them some sense of connection and yeah, I would say not aloneness, of like we've all kind of had our own experiences with our relationship with money and also um yeah, that connection of like the more we talk about it, the more it exposes it, the more that we can like normalize having conversations around it.
Yeah, totally. I think what you just said really landed with me because when you first reached out to do the podcast, you had asked if I wanted to talk about money. And I remember in that moment my whole body just constricting and just like, oh my God, no. Like uh and over a couple of hours as I was kind of contemplating I like relaxed into it and I kind of realized like, wow, like I have had a pretty wild journey. I think everybody has a wild journey with money. But I think that that was kind of my signal that was like, oh, this actually could be one of the best things to talk about. One, I've never talked about it publicly, but also I do think that money is this thing that because of the way that we've built our society, it like rules so much. And it takes up so much space in our minds. And I think a lot of my journey with money, if I was to kind of encapsulate my story or my life in regards to money, I think it has been a big one. I don't have it figured out. Like I don't know that anybody ever really has it all figured out, right? We're all just learning. But I think that my journey has been one where I've shifted from my mind into my body when it comes to money. Growing up, I had a bit of a interesting childhood in the sense that um, my mom and my dad split when I was very very young, and my dad wasn't really in the picture for the first decade of my life. Um, and my mom remarried a couple times, so we were kind of changing situations up quite a bit. And she, each time that she remarried to somebody who was in the military. So I wouldn't say that growing up we had really that much of like an extravagant life. Like it was very base level, like military housing kind of thing, And so it wasn't really extravagant at all. And when I think about the highs and the lows, something that often comes to mind is um, when my mom divorced her second husband. We moved from Alaska. I grew up the first 7 or 8 years of my life in Alaska, and we moved to Florida. And big shift, big change. But at that time, I mean, my mom had a really rough childhood as well. So it wasn't like she was at the top of her game when it came to, work and money and purpose and all of that. And so her main focus was just taking care of her three kids. And at the time, I think I look to my mom now with so much reverence, because just to see what mothers go through, and to see, how they show up for their kids is wild. But in this one season of our lives, we were kind of at our lowest point where we were living in an extremely low income area. My mom actually worked at a daycare, specifically because that got us free daycare. So after school, like, we would just go to daycare and then we would be there the rest of the day. Um, and I remember my back then, this was like 1997, 1998. McDonald's had like a promotional back then where on Tuesdays from like 5 to 6 p.m. you could buy hamburgers, basic hamburgers, for 29 cents. And on Wednesdays you could buy cheeseburgers for 39 cents. And my mom figured out that buying sliced cheese and going after the Tuesday hamburgers was actually cheaper than going after the Wednesday cheeseburgers. And so what she would do is she would go to I remember distinctly going through the drive-through and ordering like tons of hamburgers, like 50 hamburgers, and that's what we ate like around the clock for a season of our lives. I have a very big aversion to McDonald's now. I don't know if it's linked with that or not. I just can't stand it. But when I look back, I look at that time as kind of like, from a financial standpoint, that was like the low of the low that I can remember. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment, sharing a room with my mom, my two sisters having their room, and eating McDonald's around the clock. And as I grew up, things kind of started to shift as I became a teenager. I watched my mom, really step into a space that she started to feel a lot of purpose, and she really excelled in that space. And I watched kind of the quality of our lives, and the finances of our family definitely start to rise. We ended up buying a bigger house. I started watching my parents buy cars, and like all of a sudden we were in this place where we were living, you know, at the time as a kid, I don't recall thinking like good or bad, but it was just, this is what we had. But I think that a lot of that for me growing up, and especially finding kind of some things that I was really interested in photography. I picked up a camera when I was 12 years old. I was fortunate enough to really find something I really loved when I was really young, and it ended up becoming this thing that like I built a business around. I've really built a life with this. At first, when I started my business, I know at that time I was so operating from my mind. And I think that there was a lot of conditioning, and there was a lot of like, what I saw my parents do growing up, which was work really hard and hustle, and don't be very emotionally present, and just grind it out. And so that's kind of the route that I took. And I found when I first started my business that it was so mental. It was so psychological. I was studying, psychology and persuasion and marketing and all these things that are very mental things. Um, and my business took off faster than I ever thought that it possibly could. And to the point where I was doing things or making more money than most everybody I knew in the photography world, at least. Um, and I think it was at that point that I realized, like, I am not feeling how I want to feel, even though I have all of these material things. I have the finances, I have the status, I have the following, all of that. I didn't feel how I wanted to feel. And I think it was at that point when everything started to crumble, because I had this wild personal awakening. I think that that's when my money journey really actually started, because that was my journey. That was when my journey with myself actually really started. And I think that since then, um, it's been definitely quite an experience just to really be able to break down the walls of like how money can rule our lives, and how we can so mentally feel anxious and exhausted and overwhelmed by just the role that money plays in our lives. So
Yeah, so much of what you said. It's like, yes, like I wrote down, and there's this book called Mind Over Money, but it's all
mm,
about like it's like a two psychologists. I think it's a son and a dad, and they kind of break down like, and they talk about money worshiping, and like that is something that I identified with, of like you said, like putting money like up on this pedestal, and like believing that the money, is going to, if we have a certain amount, that's going to bring us, the joy or the safety or the security. And for me, what I realized is like I would get to a certain level or point and have assets, and then I was like, okay, well at 250,000 it was like, well, okay, now I moved the goalpost, right? Okay, at 500,000 it was like, well shit, I think it was around 500,000. I was like, wait a second, like it's not, I'm not, my body, like, I don't think I had the language of my body, but like, I don't feel any different with 500,000 than I did with 250. And so it was
mm,
like something, there's something else here, And I think that, like you say, in the culture, right, of, you know, how we have been brought up, that like it's about status, it's about, like what you have. But even working in the financial industry, it's like, but Friday afternoon happy hours, like everyone would get sloshed. And it's like, now looking back, it's like, wait a second, like we're doing some of these things because there's things within us that need love and attention and tenderness, and so why are we, rushing to the bar and getting, completely, it's like all of these people that I'm around have all of this money and they still don't feel right.
yeah.
They're chasing
Mm,
something. Something that you said about, growing up and with your mom, and something that I've really had to, which started with me having compassion for myself first, but like compassion for our parents, because I think a lot
mm,
of times I think when you go through, like it's not like you have anger and then you like go through this process and you never feel the anger again, right? It's like, but when I started kind of like really unpacking and really tuning into my body and thinking about how I grew up and like what my parents, and like having like there was some anger that I felt like, why did I have to be the one that knew all of this stuff? Why did I get, like I felt a lot of like um yeah, I felt a lot of anger, right, towards my dad, of like, why did you share all this with me? Like I know, and I see now like it was from a place of like wanting to empower me and to teach me things, and then also that feeling of like, yeah, but I was 10, And having, now looking back, having such compassion for our parents, because I can't imagine like trying to make ends meet, trying to pay your bills, trying to do the things and feeling such stress. Like, what it's like when we're in the survival base versus creativity, and it's like, we're just, you have three children, you're doing the best that you can. And like having, I think for me, it was like really coming to a place of such love and compassion that like my parents did the best that they could with what they have, And I don't know how many of us have gotten like, I don't want to say I've gotten to that place, but I think for a long time I stayed in that like anger and upset place versus kind of viewing it from their lens, right? Like what is it like that your mom was like, "Hey, how do I feed my children?" Like this was the thing that I could do to make sure that food was on the table, and, and I think when we can have compassion for ourselves and we can really get, which going back to like getting out of our heads into our bodies, right? Like feeling that the tenderness that we all have, right? That vulnerability, and then being able to have compassion for our parents, for, because I always look at it, the intention is always like to take care of your children, to to make them have a better life than what you had, right? Like that's the that's the viewpoint, that I hold like parents, with. So
yeah, I feel like I think I think when it comes to our parents, like, when I had my personal awakening, which basically was just the moment that I felt, and I can look at a distinct moment in which this started to happen, but it really was a season of my life in which this really started to the wake up started to happen.
Mhm.
I remember feeling so much anger,
Mm,
and so much grief.
mm,
And I wanted to blame everybody. I felt like
mm,
everybody had lied to me. Like, and I was
mm.
I was 26 years old, and I was like, what in the world? Like, how in the world have I been duped like this?
Yeah.
Um, and I think, you know, any time what I've had to learn over the years, especially when it comes to my parents, because at first I really wanted to blame my parents a lot.
Mhm.
I
Mm,
and I said some things, I did some things that looking back, I can see that it was just a little child inside of
yeah.
me who was just freaking out. But I think any time that, and I've had several experiences that have kind of brought me to this realization, but anytime that we are angry at somebody, it's because we just have an emotional charge going on inside of us. It's our experience. Like, you're the one who's feeling the thing, and we can continue to blame others, or we can just actually be with what we're feeling, which
Yep.
is so difficult, and so scary. Like, to really go into the depth of that, and I think a bigger conversation, more side conversation, I think is like, how do I do that, and who do I go to do that, and like, you know, I think there's a lot of questions to be, or a lot of things that need to kind of go into that, but I've just found that the more that I be with me, the more that I feel through those things, and like be really intentional about going into the depth of my emotions, and feeling those things and releasing the discharging the energy that I'm holding from my childhood, from my teen years, from my young adult years. The more compassion I'm left with. Like, that's all you got, because you can blame your parents all day long, but if you really sit with it, like, who are they blaming? Their parents? And who are they blaming? Their parents? And who are they blaming? Their parents? Like, generational trauma is a thing. Like, things get passed down, and it's not that we're here to like heal all of our trauma. It's really, can we just come to the realization that, like, everyone's doing the absolute best that they can with what they have? I
Yes.
think that's um where I have found so much value in human design, because, like, if anything, human design is the opportunity to understand yourself on such a depth that, I mean, I've studied a lot of things. I know that there's a lot of things I haven't studied. There's infinite modalities and systems in the world, it seems like, these days, but I've never come across something that has helped me, given me a map to explore myself as much as human design has. But on the flip side, in learning not just my design, but in learning my design, expanding my capacity to be able to learn other people's designs, I think that it's a system that really allows you to learn how to truly respect other people without putting your stuff on them. Like, because now seeing my parents' designs, I'm like, oh my God, like, everything makes sense. I can see exactly what played out. I can see when shadow came into play. I can see when alignment came into play. I can see the fluctuation of those things, and only to the degree that I can, but I think that it's another tool that just cultivates more and more compassion. Um, and I think that that's the key. And I think that that's even the key when it comes to compassion. I think that hmm, I've never connected these, but there's something in me right now that really wants to correlate compassion and gratitude with one another.
Mm.
And I find that gratitude is just this specific quality of energy that really plays a big role in money.
Yeah. Oh, I wanna go back. I wrote down a couple of things. One, human design, I 100% agree with you because when I learned about my design, like you just said, when I learned about my parents' design, like I was able to view them from such like you say, a compassionate, loving lens, like, of course, right? And having that tool, because I think a lot of people are like, well, this is something else that I come across a lot. It's like, well, how do I actually get into my body? Right. And I think it's different. Like the process is different for each person. Right. And so I would love it if you're open to sharing. How do you like to get into your body? Um, but one of the things that this was probably back in May, June, I was, like I feel like language is such a beautiful thing, and also like sometimes it like keeps us in our minds, because I was like actually searching for the feeling that I was trying to feel versus just feeling whatever it was. Like I couldn't name the feeling, but I was sensing and feeling something, right? And I realized, I was like, wait a second, I'm like spending this time trying to figure out what am I feeling versus like just being with the feeling. And I think, so often we might be looking for how we're feeling, or we might be trying to follow a process a certain way or doing versus, like you said, like literally just being where we are, which is scary, right? Like in the beginning, scared the bejesus out of me, right? Like it didn't
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
good. It did not feel good. Like I couldn't really do it for very long, like I'm talking like seconds, right? Like minutes maybe. Um,
Yep.
and it's like a practice like anything. Like the more that you do it, the better you get at it. When I say better, what I mean is like the more um it doesn't feel as intense in my body as it used to. Um, so I would love it if you wanted to share like some of the things that you've used to get into your body.
Yeah. I think something that just came up was there was a I'm gonna butcher this to some degree, but there was a I want to say a French philosopher way back in the day. I think his name was I'm gonna butcher this, but it's Blaise Pascal, I think, or Blase Pascal, something like that.
Mhm.
And I love that he said this thing once that he basically said that all of humanity's problems start from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And I I think a lot of people would debate that. But in my experience, I don't think that there's I think that he just nailed it. Like
Mhm.
um I think the beingness is the part, and even in doing coaching, a lot of what I'm you know, no one really has business problems. Everyone just has personal problems that are affecting their business. And the personal problems that they're having is a problem of beingness. And
Yep.
we're all on this journey of self-awareness. We're all on this journey of like, who am I and how am I different and how do I stand out and like how do I create something that's unique to me or authentic to me, you know? And that comes through the journey of presence, through beingness. And if you can't be with yourself, then your mind is never going to figure it out. Like that's the part that is really uh the mind fuck of it all. Like
Yeah.
it's you
It
have to
literally
be
is.
with you to be able to understand you, you know? And
Yeah.
so and I think that growing up in a world, or at least, in our country, like very, very capitalistic and very materialistic, to consider what it means to just be with yourself. It's anti the path we've been taught. The path we've been taught is go, move, do, grind, hustle, like, it's constantly on the go rather than operating from a place of beingness. So I can recall so many times in my business where it was like I would wake up with anxiety. Like, oh my God, what do
Yep.
I have to do today? Oh
Yep.
my God, am I doing the right thing? Oh my God, am I, and it's the worst. Like anxiety is terrible. The feeling of your
Yes.
nervous system being shocked constantly is I wouldn't wish it on my enemies. Like it's terrible, And so but it's also one of those things that like in those moments, can you just rather than play into
Do
that
what it
conditioning,
yep.
can you just sit? Can you be still with that? Even though it's gonna suck, even though it's gonna be painful. I think my biggest or the thing that really, really kickstarted all of this. I grew up, I was a really active kid. Um, I love extreme sports. Um, and I think a lot of times And I say this just because this has been my journey. A lot of times I think when it comes to meditation, a lot of people are at the point where they look at meditation, they think about meditation, and they go, I need to move. Like, I need to go on a run to be able to meditate. And I absolutely think exercise is such an incredible way to get into our bodies. Um, but there's still a different quality to, I need to go do something to get into my body, and I can just sit right here and be in my body, you know? And I ended up it was kind of a string of synchronicities that led to this, but I years ago discovered an organization called Dhamma, who they host these. Some people refer to them as retreats. I would not call it a retreat. It's more of a course,
Mm.
and they teach a very specific form of meditation known as Vipassana. And I had no idea what Vipassana was, and I didn't want to go on the internet and try and figure it out. And even if you did go on the internet and you try and like listen to someone's explanation of Vipassana, there's no possible way that you can actually understand what it is, you know. Um, but I decided to sign up for this Vipassana. So I was in Italy for about a month and a half for workshops and shoots and work and that sort of thing, and I ended up having the opportunity to go to my first Vipassana. It's a 10-day long silent meditation course in which you are learning to meditate. And you're on a very strict schedule. You're meditating off and on. You have breaks in between, but you're going at 1 hour, 1.5, and 2 hour long sessions for about 10 and a half hours a day for 10 days straight. And you're on the same schedule every single day, starting at 4 a.m., ending at 9 p.m.
Talk about a lot for
And
your nervous system. If you're a
oh
person that
man,
hasn't sat with yourself and then to go for 10
it's
days of 10
it's
hours, that's
wild.
intense, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
intense the moment you arrive and you hand over your keys and your phone and all your belongings, because you're not allowed to take anything with you whatsoever. No,
Mhm.
no phone, no journal, no yoga mat. You can't do exercise, nothing. Like literally, you are on this schedule. You cannot have any items other than the clothes on your body. And even those have to be fully covering you and very simple, no jewelry, no makeup, no perfume, like literally nothing. You are cut off from the world, and even cut off from the energetic exchange with other people. You're
Mhm.
literally
With
in
yourself.
solitary confinement being trained how to be with yourself. And a lot of people that I've talked to about this are just like, hell no, I would never do that, and I get it. I get it. But the value that I walked away with was unspeakable. Like I can't put into words what the level of presence that you have when you come out of that place, the level in which you can smell the grass, the
Mhm.
the degree in which you feel the wind on your face, the level of in tuneness you are with your senses is ridiculous, because you've just um sensitized yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you've, like,
you
taken
know
away all of the
yeah,
the things that distract your senses, you know?
yeah.
I always say, like, we're human beings, not human
Hmm.
doings, right? And like you say, like, in this culture that we live of, like, hurry up, fast, 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 go, 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 go. And so for some of you that are like you just said, hell no, I cannot do that. Like, where is your starting point, right? Like for me, I had to just start with like a guided 5-minute meditation, right? Like I used to never
Yeah.
meditate. Like, who can do that? Blah, 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 right? Like, okay, but what can I do that's a little bit like, ooh, it's uncomfortable to sit, and like be with myself for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. It's like there's always a little bit outside your comfort zone that you can take that can get you closer to, ultimately like no phone, no music, like just being with yourself. And I think like our society does not value silence, stillness. Like I remember, I don't know if I said this on this podcast or a different one, but like Alex Hermosi was talking about, like you can't make money in meditation, right? Like if people want to go get an anxiety pill, they don't want to like sit and meditate. And while I don't necessarily believe what he said, I do agree with like we have been brought up of like, what's the quick fix, right? Like if there's a pain in our bodies and we're like, what doctor do I need to see versus like, no, what emotion might be trapped or am I feeling in my body that's causing this pain, right? And when we can really get back to the basics of like, everything is happening within me and what I see in my external world is because of what I'm thinking and feeling, right? Like we've been taught or led to believe that like things outside of us are what are causing us to feel a certain way versus like it is generated within us first and then we see it in the external world. And so that slowing down and stillness that and the amazing things that come from that, right? Like you're talking about the anxiety, right? Like so many of us want the feeling to go away. And so we get on the train and just do whatever, right? To make the feeling go away, which it doesn't really go away, right? And versus sitting with it, being with it, and like allowing it to dissipate. But I don't think anybody we didn't learn that in school. Like nobody's teaching us really. I mean, I think it's now starting to, obviously come about, but like nobody taught us like that was the answer, not to like do more, hurry up and all of the things.
Yeah, and I what you just said, and that whoever that was that said that about you can't make money in meditation, I would strongly disagree. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in the sense of like go make money being a meditator. I don't mean that as much as I mean that.
We can create money with meditation. Like
Well, yes,
like
exactly.
by
You can
us
create
meditating, by
money.
each yes.
Right. Like I think one of
Yeah.
the big questions, that I've had over the years, and I've literally overthought, I've gone down every rabbit hole to try and come up with like, what's the answer to this question? But the question that I've gotten probably more than most questions is like, what is value? Like from a business standpoint, right? We're business owners. We're here to create value, to add value to other people's. What is value? In being asked questions with a defined head and all the gates activated, I'm like, I'm like asking that question internally all the time, And I think that my journey has really showed me, especially in the last couple of years, I think I finally experienced what the answer was. I experienced it. I didn't learn it. Like I didn't learn it in terms of like I didn't read it in a book. I experienced it and I went, "Oh my God, that's what it is." But I think that the thing that everybody wants, and I don't feel in this moment that I'm projecting like as if this is just what I want. Though this is like the core of what I want as well. But I think that the core of what every human being on the planet wants is they want to feel safe to be themselves. And a regulated nervous system
Yes.
will help another nervous system regulate. Like
Yep.
co-regulation
I was going to
starts with
say
one person being regulated, period.
yep.
And so
Yep.
you have to feel safe to create safety for other people. You have to be safe and secure and grounded in who you are to be able to do that for other people. And I think that the beauty of life is that we go through life and you may have a season in which you feel really safe and grounded and secure in yourself. And then something may happen that throws you off. And it's like, welcome to the hero's journey. It's time to find the next level of safety and keep spiraling up this thing. But I think that that's the part where no one really cares about what you know. Everyone cares
No.
about how safe you are.
Yeah.
And when it comes to um when it comes to operating a business or when it comes to money, you have to feel safe in order to not have these external factors be controlling you and spinning you out all the time. And so um I think as well, because I think this would have been super valuable for me to hear somebody say this years ago, was the goal is not that you're trying to get regulated in your nervous system, which if you don't know what that means, it basically means that you just feel calm, you feel zen, you feel grounded, you feel at home within yourself. It's not that we're trying to get there 100% of the time. Your nervous system is built to fluctuate between ventral vagal, sympathetic, parasympathetic, fight or flight, shut down, regulated. We're meant to fluctuate. it's not about being 100% of the time regulated. It's about how quickly you can regulate when you dysregulate.
You
And
can
I think that
return
that's
back
the
to
part.
baseline.
Right. Can you
Yep.
return back to baseline quickly? Because what ends up happening, what I experience and what I see so many people deal with is that they get dysregulated. They don't even know what that means. They don't understand the feelings they're having in their body. They get dysregulated, but because of the way we've been trained, because of the way that we've been conditioned to live in our minds rather than our bodies, because we have this external authority rather than an internal authority, because we watched our parents growing up and we're like, we should do that, or we should do what our friends do, or we should do what our mentors and leaders are doing. We start doing what everyone else is doing rather than what we're supposed to do. And in turn, we find ourselves in this chronic dysregulation where it's just our bodies are being electrocuted all day long, all the time, trying to keep up because we don't think that what we're doing is the right thing. And until you can learn how to be with your feelings and learn how to regulate and come back to baseline faster, you're not going to experience the sense of wholeness and beingness and presence that you actually want out of life. You're not going to sense the level of safety that you actually want. And from that point, you're not actually going to be able to add the value that you know you could add because you're not energetically in integrity with how you actually want to feel.
How would you describe safety? What does safety mean to you?
I would say I would correlate it to a lot of things. I would say not being a threat, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would also say it's being in your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's being okay with what's going on in your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's having self-trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think confidence is mixed in there, and not
Mm.
confidence from a mental place of like, let me try and prove myself, I got this, but confidence as in I don't need I don't I'm grounded here. I'm at home.
Yeah.
I'm at home in
Home.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with all that. I also think, and you said this a little bit, it's like when I learned that it was okay to feel whatever I was feeling,
Mm,
that to me, like I have full body chill saying that, like that to me was like, okay, that's what we're after, right? Like, because when it's okay to feel guilt, when it's okay to feel embarrassment, when it's okay to feel shame, and I can sit with it. Oh, and when I can love every single emotion that I have and that it is here to allow me to turn inward, to be tender, to, you know, be with that parts of me that I have either abandoned or betrayed, like that to me is like, that's
mm.
everything you said. And like, that is like, because we're running, right? Like we're running from, it's not safe to feel certain emotions. Like it wasn't safe, maybe growing up, right? Like maybe we, either from our teachers, our parents, or whomever, right? Like all of the conditioning, generational, like you can name it, right? Like all of it. And like, is it safe to feel anything that your body is feeling in that moment and to be with it as long as it takes to be with it? And I have noticed this too. It's like, okay, well, I felt it. It's like, well, is it still there? Yeah. It's like, it's almost like, okay, I did the thing versus like, it's still, it still needs to be be there and be expressed, right? Versus like, I did the thing and now, okay, it's versus truly being with it as long as it takes. Like, I think we still, that goes back to the mind, like we have this idea of like how long it's supposed to take, right? Versus like, no, being with yourself when you're experiencing whatever you're experiencing.
Yeah, I Vipassana was a I think Vipassana was one of the first major experiences I had in relation to getting into my body.
Mm.
However, and I think that this is something that I've never heard anyone talk about, but this has been my experience, and I think that this is the part of life that I think is valuable for anybody to know is you're a human moving through this world. We all have um, definition from a human design perspective. We all have
Yeah.
definition. We all have openness, other than that one, like 0.3% of people or whatever, that's like fully defined. Crazy.
For our reflectors, right? Like, or for my
But they're
great
100%
mom that
undefined. Yeah.
listens. Yeah.
Yeah. Is your mom a reflector?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
Anyways, um, uh, we're all moving through this life and we are all picking up energy,
Yeah.
whether that's from other people, whether that's from the planetary transits, whether it's just from shit is moving. You know, when you go out into the world, things are moving, you're experiencing things, you're sensing things, you're thinking about things. Like emotion is happening, energy is in motion
I was going to
constantly.
say, we need to say that, right? Because emotion is just energy in motion. Like we're all just
Yeah.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going out, we are experiencing energy in motion, we're picking up energy. I at this point don't know if you can't not pick up energy. It's just part of the process. You have the whole chart, you have the whole everything, right? And in that, living in a culture that tells you to go 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 go, what oftentimes I have experienced now in retrospect looking back is that of course life is going to get overwhelming if you're just picking up energy and you're never actually giving yourself space to be alone, to discharge, to be in your own auric field. If you're not having tools and practices that discharge the energy, it's an ongoing process. There is no end place. It is going to constantly happen. And I think that when I went into my first Vipassana, like I said, I walked out and it was wild. I think the most wild part of it was jumping back into life and just seeing so wildly clearly. Vipassana means in Sanskrit, it means to see reality as it is. And you see reality as it is. And reality is can be harsh depending on how much you are actually trying to live in reality. And it was an incredibly wild experience to be able to jump back into the world and just see the level of reaction in everything and to just be this very still being that's just watching it all play out. And it was very isolating. It felt very lonely. There was a lot of things that came with it. It came with more work, right? But I think in that process of things, I've done multiple Vipassanas now. And what I realize is that that level of presence doesn't last. It can't last. You're not
Yeah.
meditating 10 and a half hours a day. It's going to run out. And I found after my first one, for me personally, it was about 8 months before it clicked. I went, whoa, I'm reactive. Like I'm really reactive, way more than I was when I came out of Vipassana. So it dissipates. We're constantly being conditioned because we're constantly picking up energy and experiencing energy in motion. And so finding the tools that really help you discharge regularly. For me, I have found I started doing conscious rebirthing breath work about a year and a half ago, and um, I really feel that I am going to continue on with this journey indefinitely at this point because it puts it on my calendar every week to 2 weeks. It's going and I know what the process is. I know that I'm discharging the energy. I know that I'm actually setting this time aside, 2 hour window for me to breathe into my body, to get into my body and to actually feel what I'm feeling. And especially feeling into the depth of anything that may have really rocked my nervous system in the last week to 2 weeks. And I feel like not having that for me, like I look at it now and I'm like, of course we have a dysregulated world with people with chronic anxiety and depression and stress and overwhelm, and it's like we aren't feeling what we want to be feeling, and we aren't consistently finding ourselves in a place of presence, not just because I sat in meditation for a couple minutes and I was like, all right, I'm breathing and I'm good. And like check,
Checklist.
it's like really clearing out, really clearing out and getting back down to baseline of like, this is what presence is over and over and over. I read something recently that basically said cultivating presence in your life is the process of collecting present moments.
Hmm.
And it was just like, man, yes, like I need to fill my life with all the things that I know that cultivate presence, that give me the opportunity to have present moments over and over and over and over and over, that put me more in my body than in my head. And the more that I've been on that journey, the more that I feel safe.
Mhm.
And a year and a half ago, when I started working with this breathwork coach, I did not
Mhm.
feel safe in my body. I felt very, very unsafe, very chaotic, very much overwhelmed going on. But it's also one of those things that it's not an overnight process. I posted
Yeah.
something on Instagram a couple months ago that was hilarious, and it's like this meme of somebody uh, has a bucket of water and they're coming out on their balcony and they throw the bucket of water off the balcony, and there's like the quote at the top is like me trying to heal 30 years of trauma in one session, and like the camera pans and the whole field is on fire. And I was like, that was me in session 100%. Thought I was going to get through all this, but it is one of those things that it's one step at a time, and it is, can you continue to come back and can you continue to breathe in? And at first it's going to be unfathomably difficult. Like there's just no other way to put it. It's going to be the hardest shit you've probably ever done in your life, because facing yourself is, I think, the challenge that we're here to face. And
Yeah.
so it's not easy, but it's worth it.
It's worth it. Like, I got full body chills. Like, it's not, I think that's the thing is like, we've been taught like there's a quick fix, right? Like, this will occur until we decide to transcend and go do something else, right? Like, that is, that is our, I think that is part of being a human on this plane, right? Like, it is. And I think for everybody is like, what I had to learn is like, what works for me, right? Because we go back to like so many people suggest different things and it's like, oh, well, it worked for this person. Then you have these expectations, right? Versus like just trying things like breath worked for me, EFT worked for me. I tried RRT, rapid resolution therapy. Not really. It's worked for other people, right? Like there's so many different, and meditation and just being like literally sitting and doing nothing, right? Like that that wasn't where I started, right? And also like it's just like you've got to play with this stuff playing. Like for me, I know that's the part of the moving my body, and that's not necessarily being like sitting, and but it is a way for me to get into flow. And it is like I don't think about, like my husband that's like, what do you love surfing so much? I'm like, with the defined head and ajna, it's one of the very few places that my
Mm.
mind doesn't give me thoughts, right? I think because I'm just so focused on reading the waves and being in the ocean and just, you know what I mean? It's just like it's the one time that, very few times I should say, right? Like that it's not like giving me all of the things. And so I would say, to each of you, like just experiment with what feels good for you. And when I say feels good, I don't mean that it's going to necessarily feel good in the beginning. It's just like what feels, I know for me, I have like, well, it worked for this person. Like I kept going at it and going at it versus like, okay, let me just try something different. And that felt better for me. And it worked for me. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
what are the things that, um, we talked about being in nature last time on the podcast, and like we are nature. And also, I know that like when I've worn my shoes too much and I haven't been in the grass and I haven't been, like that is something that for me grounded, and it feels good to lay in the grass and just sunbathe. You know what I mean? Like put a, and put a blanket down and just be right. Like so it's just for everybody, it's just like, you have to be willing to experiment, I think, of like what works for you, and to, like you say, practice and to just keep at it, because there will never come a point, and I think that's where I was for a long time. It's like, oh, I thought I would do the things and then I would be all done,
Yeah.
versus like this is forever. Like this is just it's just like you brush your teeth. It's just like it's just part of the daily what we do, you know?
Yeah. I think something that what you just said was so key. Like if there's one thing I can look back on in my life and just be like, man, like this such a funny paradox, if you will, of our minds is we're trained to think that others have the answer. We are
Oh my
trained to think
gosh.
that others know what we should do, right?
Yep. Yep.
But my entire journey has been me figuring shit out, like experimenting
100%.
and figuring it out. And I think that that is just so important to say because nobody's path is your path. Like that's the point of the journey is that you are walking into the dark forest by yourself and you're figuring out how to get to the other side by yourself. And I know that that can maybe feel a little bit extreme or a little bit intense. But we can I go a little bit woo woo here for a second?
I'm like, it's my life. Yes, of course.
I
Get to
uh
say whatever you want
I
to say.
um I have I've been really meditating on this for months now. I had this epiphany and I was just like when it came through I was just like damn, that is potent for me at least. And I basically just had this epiphany months ago that the word alone is also the same as all one. And it's like this paradox of us being these five-dimensional conscious beings in this three-dimensional reality and these bodies and personality and egoic, identities and all of this. And it's like we're fluctuating between those two things constantly. It's like we're tapping into like pure consciousness, awareness, presence, and then we're coming back into 3D. And like that's the game. The game is that. And I think that there is what can feel very overwhelming. It did for me at one point in time, is sitting in the reality that you are all alone.
Yeah.
But it's just because we're all one. Like it is one consciousness experiencing life through many, many different perspectives, many, many different mechanics. And I think that that's kind of a beautiful um, reminder of just realizing that it's all just a game and it's all
Yeah.
like we're gonna fluctuate, you're gonna go in and out, and the more that you can find peace in that fluctuation, the more you're gonna play the game in the way that is actually more fun for you to play the game. So uh I think that it's very easy to think that someone else has the answers if you don't feel like you have the answers right now for yourself, but nobody has the answers. No one has any of this figured out. And you going on the journey of going, not I should go do a Vipassana because Robert did, or I should go do EFT, or I should go, do any of these things. It's really, how does this feel in my body? Like,
Yes.
does my body say yes to going and doing a Vipassana for 10 days? Or does it say yes to going to therapy or doing breath work or learning to meditate or starting to do yoga? Or like, what does your body say yes to? Because the more that you listen to your body and the more that you just follow your inner authority, the more you're going to cultivate that self-trust and you're going to find more safety and presence in your body because of that journey.
Oh my gosh. Yes, so much. I wrote down patience, which I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of us have, right? Like our muscle isn't that strong for patience. It's being willing and having the
I don't think it's
courage.
I don't think it's that we don't have patience as much as we don't have presence. Because if you have presence, then patience is just the byproduct.
I guess
Like,
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm right
Yeah.
here. But I get you. Yeah, patience is hard. I want that now.
Yeah. Like, and I think the willingness and the courage, right? Like the willingness and the courage to be with yourself. Like And you said something about like, I wrote down grounded. It's like the self trust when you develop that that level of self trust. Because I mean, I think we all probably all have, right? Like we have denied, like Gabor Mate says, like that trauma has just been like a betrayal of ourselves, and you know
Mm.
where like we betrayed who we are, what we were feeling in that moment to connect to someone else. And when we can come back, I have full body chills, when we can come back to ourselves and we're like, I am like I I am number one, right? Like numero uno right here. Like Robert is numero uno. Like all of you are numero uno, full stop, like first and foremost. And being so grounded, and like I don't even have the language to describe the amount of self-trust that I have developed over the last year. Like, and here we go back to safety, right? Like if it doesn't work out the way I think it's going to because I said yes or no to something, I'm okay with whatever is going to occur and what I'm going to feel. But continuing to choose my inner authority, my knowing over someone else, like, man, it's everything.
Yeah. And I think to kind of wrap all of this back in, like when you're operating from that place of beingness and that place of presence, money becomes a tool
Mm,
rather than something you're being tortured by.
yeah.
Like it's no longer this thing that you're operating from this mental place of I'm doing it wrong, or I don't have it figured out, or I suck with money, or it's this is just a tool for me to play the game,
Yeah.
and I get to decide how well I play the game. Like that's it. I've I've been thinking a lot lately about just like not to go into like, we're all in a simulation. Like I don't want to go there as much, but if you think of it like a video game,
It kind of
uh
is. I mean,
it is like you like I've been playing this game. I don't play a lot of video games, but in the winter season, it gets rainy. I've been playing the new Zelda game this
mhm,
winter, which
mhm.
has been so much fun. And it's just crazy. Like you're holding this device, you're playing this character, you're collecting coins and like doing stuff with them, And it's like that's all that we're doing. That we're literally just consciousness playing a character, collecting coins, and like have fun.
Yeah.
Period. Whatever that looks like. Does that look like buying a house and then having a 401k and investing in this and all of that? If it does, cool. If it doesn't, do something different. Like it doesn't matter what you do. I think we just get so inundated in our minds with so many things that we should do with our money. I mean, it's like, what feels fucking good?
Oh
What do
my
you want
gosh.
to do?
Yes.
What do you want to do? What's your inner authority saying? Like, are
Yes.
you in your body? Is your body telling you what to spend money on, or is your mind telling you what to spend money on? That's the correlation that for me in this whole journey, and I think why we've gone on this whole rabbit hole of like presence and meditation and all these things. It's because if you aren't in your body, you're just not going to have fun. And at first, it's not going to be fun to get into your body necessarily, but it's like I don't know, I'm just convinced at this point. Like you got to go through that dark tunnel to come out the other end and be like, I got it. Like let's have a good time now.
I'm
Um
I'm so glad you
and I
said
think that
that
money
because go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say like money is that thing that like we give our power away to money. Like it's a hard thing for me being an entrepreneur to, and I was privileged. I had the opportunity. Maybe it was fate that I picked up a camera and I fell in love early and I started a business when I was a teenager and I've been doing it ever since. I've just been in it for so long that now when I look at friends, when I look at family, when I look at people who are like in a 9 to 5, not that I think that there's anything wrong with being in a 9 to 5
Mhm.
because that may be what's best for you in this season, especially in creating safety. But there's a certain level of I have to build my life around you in having a job, right? Nothing wrong with having a job. It's something I've had to get a job throughout my journey of being an entrepreneur in seasons because I needed time and space to do some other things. But I think we all deeply crave freedom, I think that means a little bit something different for everybody. But if money is something that you're constantly giving your power away to, I'm constantly sacrificing a life that would fully light me up, that would fully, you know, inspire me and would fully um allow me. I don't like the idea of like step into my potential or anything like that, but just, do I love how I'm showing up and giving of myself? Do I love how I'm serving? Do I feel an integrity, and do I feel stoked that I'm making a difference in this world?
Mm.
I think we miss that when we are so caught up in giving our power away to money, because money is constantly shocking our nervous systems, or constantly bringing about overwhelm or stress, because we're in our minds trying to figure out a puzzle of how to get more money so that we can feel secure enough. But like, you're never going to feel secure enough, no matter if you have $50,000 or $500,000. You're not going to feel secure enough if your nervous system can't come back to baseline quickly, period. And I think that
100.
that's really what we're speaking about here, is all of this inner work that we talk about. It's to get us to the point where we can feel safe enough, where money just becomes a tool for us to go have fun and really enjoy our life, rather than this thing where we're like, oh, we're a slave to this world.
And when you feel safe, like you said, fun, because I for sure, if I was listening to this podcast 3 or 4 years ago, I'd be like, the fuck you say fun, right? Like I was in survival. But when you can get to that place of, like you say, being present, being okay, being in your body, like it is just for fucking fun. Like, you know, I
Fun.
don't
We're
know what
here
you
for
feel
fun.
about
We're here for pleasure.
purpose. Everyone's always like, what's my purpose? Like to fucking have fun. And then whatever else you want
Yeah.
to do, go do, right? Like that's our
Yes.
purpose. Like
Golly.
fucking come alive and like have some fucking fun and do some shit you like to do. And like everything else, it's icing on the cake. And I think we take things so seriously, which goes back to probably, right? Nervous system regulation, all of these things versus like when you're like in your body, it's, there is no past, there is no future. It is just right now. And so use
And
it the way
you can
we,
correlate this. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, like, use money in a way that, because I was that person, right? I was the money worshiper. I was the person clinging to money, thinking that it was going to, at some point, I was going to feel safe, or it was going to bring me, I was putting everything away to then enjoy my life. And I'm like, at some point, I was like, fuck this shit. Like, you're going to look back on your life, like, and you're going to be like, what did you do for 20 plus years? Like, you literally tried to save and invest your money so you could go have some fun. Well, why don't you just go have some fun right now? And like, obviously, there's lots more involved, right? Like the deconditioning and all that.
Sure.
But like, why don't you actually do the thing now and then like let money be in service to you, not of, yeah, being a slave to money? What were we going to say?
What came up when you were just talking right there, was correlating it to purpose, right? Like, what was your purpose when you were 5 years old?
Yeah. Swimming.
That's what it's about. Like, what if you can you can recall as a kid, granted, some people have really unfortunate, traumatic, very, very traumatic childhoods, where this may not have necessarily been the case. But if you imagine what it was like to be a kid in your body as a kid, but then have the mind of an adult,
Yeah.
like, that's what we're going for. Like, can
Yeah.
you have the level of play and fun that you had as a kid, but have the mind, not of the conditioned mind, but the mind of just like, I can think about things. I can make decisions from a more aware place. I can learn things. I can cultivate skills, Um, and yeah, I think that that's where, when you approach money like a kid with an adult mind, it's a whole nother world than operating from a place of being in an adult conditioned, stressed out, overwhelmed body with an adult mind. Um, yeah, I'm convinced at this point that purpose is, granted, I think it can be, it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I also think it's the exact same for everybody.
Yeah.
And going back to earlier, you asked what safety is. Um, I've had this interesting experience as a coach where I've worked with a whole lot of people. I've probably, at this point, I can confidently say I've coached over 1,000 people. And a lot of those people, it's been in the area of purpose or in the area of why. We talked a little bit about this on the last podcast. And what's been fascinating is to see how literally every single person that I've ever gone on this journey with, they've all had the exact same answer, worded a little bit differently, but the exact same answer, the exact same purpose. Everybody has the exact same purpose, and it's to be yourself. It's to feel safe being authentically you. That's it. What does that mean? I need to be able to play. I need to be able to have fun. I'm here for pleasure. You're going to experience pleasure to the degree that you're willing to experience pain. In my journey, at least, that's been a truth. So it's we're here to experience life, and we're here to figure out what does it mean to be authentically me. So hopefully that's a fun journey.
Yeah. I always say, like, we were given 5 senses. It was for pleasure. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, all of it is for pleasure, and we've somehow gotten off on that. We've derailed ourselves, right? But like, I totally agree. Like, it is, and we all come to it our own way. Like, I was on a call the other day, and someone was like, well, I don't necessarily like playing the way you like to play. It's like, don't play my way, like play your way. Your way is crafting and doing, it's just like everybody has their own form. Here we go back to like comparing, right? Like, you play the way and do what lights you up, what feels good to your soul, like whatever that is. And so I love it, Robert. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
I don't think so. I love having conversations with you.
It's
the rabbit holes we go on are just so potent. I love it.
But they are, I know you're just saying rabbit holes, but like, people want a quick fix, quick answer, right? But like, you do have to, it is about here we go back to, like, we want a quick fix. We want that easy, but like, what it is like, it is simple and it's not easy, right? Like, and it takes time, and that's how to get there, right? Like, just tell me what to do, like how to feel safe with my money. It's like, well, got to go down the rabbit hole. It's like the Alice in Wonderland.
Well, I think people want, like, I hear that all the time, like we all, like, people just want the quick fix. They want the diet pill, right? Yeah. And again, people would debate this. They would argue with me about this. I don't believe it. I don't think that we actually want a quick fix. I think we just want to feel safe in our bodies, and we don't feel safe in our bodies, and we think a quick fix is the answer.
Yeah.
And if you just be with what you're feeling, be with yourself exactly as you are, and find safety in being who you are, you'll no longer need a quick fix. Like, this is one of those things that a lot of times when I'm working with people, I hear people who get on these mind traps of like, oh, I'm going to start this business and it's going to go 5 years and then I'm going to sell it and I'm going to do this and that and the other thing. If that's because you're just having fun, cool, like rad. But what's really going on? Like, because I think when you really tap into yourself and you then integrate work with your life, you no longer are doing work, you're doing your life's work.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a really big thing to be said about the mental concept of work-life balance versus work-life integration.
Yeah.
And like, are those things getting integrated? Are we actually operating in alignment? Are we actually doing what we actually want to do? Or are we sacrificing? Are we self-abandoning? Are we self-sabotaging for the sake of $1? That's, nobody can tell you, it's only you get to explore that with yourself, but doesn't sound fun to me.
Okay, my friend, thank you so much. Where do you want people to, if they want to connect to you, how do you want them to visit and find out more about you and all the things?
I'm building out some things. I'm very excited about this season of business. I have some new things coming, but as of right now, website, robertjhill.com, or Instagram at robertjhill.
Yeah. Go check out the Instagrams. Okay, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks.